Now, welcome. So, Six Nations opener in Paris is but 14 days away. Thursday night, fast approaching for Andy Farrell in Ireland. A game which you suspect will probably define the general mood for a good chunk of this tournament. If, they've Italy in round 2, but then Twickenham round 3. So, will it be Twickenham very much on the back foot and God, you don't want to lose 2 of 3? Or will it be people whispering about unlikely Grand Slam possibilities? So, big opening game. First step is, of course, Farrell's squad announcement, which has just landed as we speak. We'll get to that now and more besides. French squad, very dramatic, and then a few other bits and pieces as well. Our rugby coverage, as ever, is with thanks to Energia. They sponsor rugby in Ireland at all levels, at grassroots with the Energia AIL. They are official energy partners of Leinster, Connacht, and the Irish men's and women's teams, and their Rugby for All initiative welcomes everyone of all abilities to participate in the game. If you want to learn more about Energia's exclusive home energy offer for rugby fans, you can visit energia.ie/rugby. Cian Tracey, welcome.
Hello, Joe.
Six Nations season is on.
We're back.
We are so back. 37-man squad. I almost want to jump straight to France, but...
There's your time.
37-man squad. I don't know. Do you want me to read out the whole 37 names like in the internet age? Do you need that? I'll give you the gist really quickly. I guess if you're looking for headline news is easy. Andrew Porter is out. Robbie Henshaw is out. We saw Robbie Henshaw come off against Bayonne with a knee injury. Porter's calf has been an ongoing issue. And there are 2 uncapped players in the squad. Edwin Adogbo, no surprise. Again, we saw his power off the bench against Cast just at the weekend. And then Nathan Doak, 24 years of age, scrum half, is in. Both uncapped, both in. So if you want to kind of go by position, maybe that's the easiest way to digest it. Props, we have Jack Boyle, Michael Milne, Jeremy Lockman, Tom O'Toole, Tyke Furlong in. He obviously jogged off early as well at the weekend. Tyke Furlong in. Thomas Clarkson and Finlay Bealham. At hooker, Dan Sheehan, Ron Keller and Tom Stewart. And then locks, we'll have Joe McCarthy, Tyke Byrne, depending where he plays, but Tyke Byrne, James Ryan, Tom Ahern and Adogbo. The back row is very much Caelan Doris, Jack Cohn and Josh van der Fleer, with Nick Timoney and Keane Prendergast. At scrum half, we have Gibson Park and Craig Casey, just the 2. Oh, sorry, Nathan Doak as well, of course. And then Sam Prendergast, Jack Crowley, Harry Byrne are the 10s, with Kieran Frawley floating around in as well. Centres, Stuart McCluskey, Bundy Aki, Gary Ringrose and Tom Farrell is in. No surprises given his form. And then the back 3, Hugo Keenan is in. We have Jamie Osborne in. His injury has been very much ongoing. And then James Lowe, bit of a neck injury recently, but James Lowe is in. Tommy O'Brien, also kind of injury-ish, is in with the 2 Ulster boys, Balakoon and Stockdale. So that's your squad. Keane, I feel like there's an injury asterisk beside lots of them.
And there's 10 players officially listed. You've named a couple of them there, Joe, but there's 10 players listed as being unavailable through injury. And yeah, there's guys in there who have injury doubts over them at the moment, the likes of Tyke Furlong, who you mentioned, Finlay Bealham, who isn't going to play against Leinster this weekend. And I was down in Connacht yesterday and Stuart Lancaster was sort of saying that he'd be touch and go, really kind of paraphrasing, for Paris. So I think in that regard, it's no surprise that Ireland have named 4 tight heads, which they wouldn't normally do. Tom O'Toole and Tom Clarkson are both there. I would imagine that is for cover for both Bealham and Furlong. Hugo Keenan obviously hasn't played since the Lions tour. Jamie Osborne hasn't played since he dislocated his shoulder against Japan in November. So yeah, you definitely have a couple of doubts over players, but Ireland are heading to Portugal next week. I'd imagine that Farrell is confident that if they're named in the squad this week, they're going to be fit to go for Paris.
Yeah. Dogbo, no surprises, and Dokin as well.
Yeah, I think Edwin Adogbo would probably have been capped in November if he hadn't have picked up the head injury against Leinster in Croke Park. If you remember, himself and Brian Gleeson, his Munster teammate, were both named to travel to Chicago for the All Blacks game, but he couldn't, obviously, due to the injury. And rather than bring him back into the squad, Andy Farrell decided to let him off with Munster for the month. So I think if he hadn't picked up that injury, he probably would have been capped maybe against in that Japan game that I mentioned, that Osborne picked up the injury. And yeah, I think there's there's a good chance that a Dogbo could force his way into the 23 in Paris, and maybe a massive ask of him. But you look at the impact that he made off the bench, like you mentioned, Joe, against Cass last weekend. The previous week in Toulon, he was one of Munster's best players. Now, I think the caveat to Dogbo is he's missed 2.5 years or something like that, 2 years of rugby due to back-to-back Achilles injuries, and that's why you're seeing his minutes really managed by Munster. So it'll be interesting to see how much Farrell looks to use him, but if he doesn't get on the bench at least in that Paris game, I would fully expect him to make his debut against Italy the following week. Nathan Doak is in ahead of Caelan Blade, who was the third scrum half in November. I think at this stage Andy Farrell probably knows what he gets from Blade. Doak is an interesting one, Joe. He was one of, I think, 3 players who didn't get capped on the summer tour to Georgia and Portugal last year. 3 players, that is, who were in the squad, and I would imagine that was a massive kick for Nathan Doak, because pretty much everyone was getting capped, on that tour. And I think he's gone back to Ulster this season with a bit of a point to prove, and I think he's proven that really well. I think he's been the heartbeat of Ulster, really, and obviously they're playing so well, so he's there on merit as well.
Okay. Kind of trying to preempt the cause du jour, who's been left out talk.
There always is. The people tend to focus on that, don't they?
Well, I guess it's the easiest way to talk about it in some respects. I would think this time around there are some more kind of interesting cases than I felt there were in November. Like with the November squad, I sort of thought, yeah, that's about right. But I suppose the speed of JJ Kenny in a team that frankly just lacks speed, this Irish team. I know Balakoon is in, so there are options, and he's there. But JJ Kenny has been very exciting. There's a sense he'll be in there eventually, I think. So there's kind of a get him in now if the World Cup's approaching argument. And then Zach Ward has been talked about for even longer. Cormac Izachuku will be talked about, I suspect.
He's injured.
He's injured as well.
He's one of the 10 who was injured, so he would
keep track of all the
injuries. He would definitely have been in the squad for sure.
That's not the scandal I thought then.
Sorry,
JJ. No, it's good. It is unless you're literally a rugby correspondent reading the dispatches on a daily basis. There are so many injuries now; it's hard to know. But JJ Kenny, Zach Ward, make the case for or against next to the likes of Balakoon, Stockdale, Tommy O'Brien, James Lowe. They're all kind of nailed on. Should they be in? Should either be in? Should one be in?
So it's probably worth pointing out that as well as the Six Nations squad that was named, the Ireland 15 squad was also dropped at the same time. The Ireland 15 used to be called the Ireland A team are going to play England A at Thomond Park the day after the Paris game. So those 2 guys who you mentioned, Zach Ward and Joshua Kenny, are both in the Ireland 15 squad. I'm surprised I'm surprised both of them aren't, but particularly Zach Ward. I think JJ Kenny has been excellent, but he's only recently burst onto the scene, whereas I think Zach Ward has had a more prolonged spell. And I think there's an argument to be made that Zach Ward, pound for pound, is one of the most informed players in Irish rugby this season. When you look at his traits, his attributes, he's big, he's strong, he's a former back row. Obviously, we know about his sevens background. He's quick. I would have thought that was just like if Andy Farrell was designing, a winger, that he would have been all over that. And I'm very surprised that he hasn't been included in the squad. He's also not going to Portugal next week. His younger brother Bryn, who was also a brilliant talent, playing in the back row, himself and Darren Murray are going to go and train in Portugal next week. So it's not as if Farrell is bringing JJ Kenny or Zach Ward to have a closer look at them. And you're right, I think it's a backline that has been crying out for a bit of speed. Mac Hansen, not that he's the quickest in the world, is also one of those 10 players who's ruled out. I think Robert Balakoon is a player who Andy Farrell would love to have capped 10, 12 times over the last few years, but his body unfortunately just hasn't played ball. He's picked up injuries at really, really bad times, and I guess he's the one to benefit most, particularly ahead of his Ulster teammate Zach Ward. Tommy O'Brien, like you mentioned, Joe, he's another one who's carrying an injury. The fact that he's named in the squad would suggest it's not too serious, but he didn't look too good when he went off against Bayonne last weekend. So at a time where you're kind of wondering and hoping really that Ireland would add a bit more razzle-dazzle, a bit more pace to the backline. You've 2 relatively young guys. Zach Ward is 27. He's not quite young as many people think. It's a bit of a shame, but that's not to say that they won't be called into the Six Nations squad later on and get a first cap.
For sure. So back 3 at the moment is assuming they go well in training and people like Hugo Keenan are naturally fit anyway. It's most likely Keenan, Tommy O'Brien, James Lowe.
I think so, yeah. Big ask for Hugo Keenan. I sat down with him just before Christmas, and he was the inclination was that he would probably play a game or two for Leinster, and I would have imagined that the game this weekend against Connacht was going to be that game. But according to the Leinster squad update earlier in the week, he's not going to be playing this weekend. So that means Hugo Keenan is most likely, you'd have to say, if he passes all his fitness tests, going to be going into the cauldron of the Stade de France, not having played since last August for the Lions. Now, as you said, Joe, he's probably one of the fittest players in Irish rugby, but that is a big ask. I think Tommy O'Brien, particularly with Mac Hansen out of the team, is nailed on. I think he's been brilliant. Even obviously last season was his breakout, but he's been excellent again this season for Leinster. I think James Lowe is under serious pressure for his place. He is not having a great season. Obviously picked up an injury lately. He didn't have a great Lions tour. I think Jacob Stockdale is another Ulster player who's having a brilliant season. I think he's putting pressure on him. I think the likes of Zach Ward and JJ Kenny are putting pressure on him. So I'd imagine
Well, they're not according to this squad.
Yeah, but on the fringes, I'd imagine that game in Paris, if James Lowe is starting, he's going to get the old Joe Schmidt, Rob Kearney tap on the shoulder that I need a big one from you here, because he just hasn't been delivering over the last while.
Because this squad does, I mean, you'd have to say, broadly speaking, this does very much stand in keeping with Farrell's MO as coach, which is evolution, not revolution. He has not torn up the script here. He has not taken some obvious young, fresh, energetic talent and plugged it in. It's conservative sounds like too much of a criticism. It's not necessarily criticism. Farrell's way of doing things has largely served him well, but he's sticking to it. Whatever, what is it, 16, 17 months out to the World Cup, he's not gone for, okay, script's been ripped up, we are getting too old, things need to really change rapidly. It's a very steady squad, I would think.
Yeah, and I think that was always going to be likely the case. I think if he was here now, he would argue that this is why he has plugged in so many A games, Ireland 15 games into the calendar, because he does, seemingly put a bit of stock in them. But the pity about the way the schedule is now is that, like I mentioned, the two players, Bryn Ward and Darren Murray, are the only two guys from the squad. Now, guys from the senior squad can drop back down into the 15 squad, but Andy Farrell and the Ireland coaches are going to be away in Portugal. It's not like they're going to be training together in the HPC in Dublin, getting a look at these guys. So it's kind of unfortunate the way the calendar has dropped in that sense. But I don't think he was ever going to make wholesale changes, as much as supporters and listeners to this podcast are probably crying out for it. I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's evolution rather than revolution.
And do you think, I mean, looking at, say, JJ Kenny, it's all very exciting. He's scoring tries, he's speed. To your eye, is he too raw to go in?
Well, like, you go back to the Mac Hansen example. I know he had a lot more experience in Super Rugby, but Andy Farrell hasn't been afraid to kind of pick players if he believes they're ready. So I think we would have to say that Andy Farrell has been a really good judge of talent, and he clearly sees something in his game. Like, JJ Kenny he's not a guy who's been blazing a trail through the Ireland under-20s through your conventional pathway, came through in Bray, and I think himself would admit that he's been a late bloomer. So I think if you had offered JJ Kenny last summer, he was only in Leinster on a trial basis initially. If you had told him that he's going to be in an Ireland 15 squad come January, February, I think he would have snapped your hand off for it. I think it's more someone like Zach Ward, Joe, who, like I said, is 27 years old. I think a lot of people think himself and Tommy O'Brien are these whippersnappers who are just on the scene. Like, they've actually been around a lot longer than people think. And if you're picking on form, then Zach Ward has been more informed than James Lowe. He's been more informed than Robert Balakoon. But Farrell must see some sort of chink in his game there. But I think it's a surprise that he's not getting him in to smooth out those edges that he sees,
Yeah, totally. If you had to even guess what the chink is.
For Zach Ward, I think elements of his kicking game mainly. I think if you're looking at the left wing spot, Andy Farrell values the left-footed kicking option hugely. That's why I think if James Lowe was to go down, I think Jacob Stockdale would be a no-brainer to slot him in there. As well as he's been playing, he also has that left-footed kicking option. I think you've seen that as well with Jamie Osborne. That's why Andy Farrell has been keen to play him at fullback. Might not be his best position, but it gives you that left-footed kicking option as well. So I think there's elements of that maybe is why Zach Ward in Farrell's mind. But that's been real nitty-gritty.
No, it's a plausible theory. There have been times where James Lowe's been out and Ireland's exit strategy has really come under pressure, for instance, without that left-footed option. Okay, so that's back three. I would think in the centre, Henshaw out and Bundyacki's form, married to how well McCluskey has done of late, would pretty much nail on Stuart McCluskey at number 12, and then presumably that's alongside Ringrose.
Yeah, I don't even think you need to say too much more. I think
Yeah.
Stuart McCloskey's been excellent. You've seen he was picked for that Chicago game. Unfortunate that he picked up the injury, and he has played very well for Ireland every time he's been selected. And finally, his moment has come.
Where are you on number 10? I just need a name. I don't even want to talk about it. Just who?
Well, Harry Byrne getting a recall, I know it was sort of well flagged, but it's still it's big, you know. Andy Farrell spent so much in November bigging him up, and now he has a chance to pick him for Paris if that's the way he wants to go. I wouldn't be surprised if Andy Farrell doubles down by picking Sam Prendergast. I don't think Jack Crowley has done his case much good at all over the last few weeks with his form with Munster, particularly last weekend in terms of the missed kicks, and I think he's in danger of possibly even losing out to the match day 23. So I don't know, Joe. Like I, if you put a gun to my head right now, I would think Sam Prendergast will be the one to start for all the reasons that we've spoken about at length in this podcast. That Andy Farrell clearly values the attacking traits that Prendergast brings. And I think, to be fair, I know Harry Byrne has started a couple of the big away Champions Cup games in Leicester and Bayonne, but Leinster's attack has still looked the best when Sam Prendergast is on the pitch. But the thing about Prendergast and Jack Crowley actually is in recent weeks they've both found themselves being moved out of out half, which is not a good sign. And I would think Andy Farrell is raging about that, because Munster and Leinster are doing what suits them best, and Prendergast was very good from fullback at the weekend against Bayonne. But it's not a great sign if you're being moved for Harry Byrne, who obviously took over the kicking duties. In Jack Crowley's case, it's JJ Hanrahan, who hasn't exactly shot the lights out since he's come back. He took over the kicking to touch last week against Cass with Jack Crowley moved out. So it's a real tricky situation. I don't think we're none the wiser a year or over a year out from the World Cup where we're at with the 10 situation, which I don't know, some people could argue it's a good thing to have that competition, but I think Andy Farrell would much rather it be a little bit more solidified.
Yeah, it's not a good thing at the moment. I mean, because what we're trying to do with our 10s at the moment is actually accommodate some glaring weaknesses, as opposed to, God, they're all shooting the lights out. It's so hard to pick.
They all have glaring, I think, weaknesses.
Glaring problems. Yeah.
And they're not getting better, which is the worrying thing.
No. Like, funny, I think Prendergast is attacking better than ever at the moment. He looks incredible at the moment. He's really finding his feet, his eyes in attack.
Yeah.
But the tackling is the tackling, and you're away in France, and they'll target him.
Which they did in Dublin.
Yeah. And there's the kicking off the tee, which, you know, if Ireland are going to win this game, it's going to be tight. If France could win the game tight, or it could be 15, 18 points if they're in the mood. But Ireland are going to win this probably tight if they're going to win it. So you would presume 90% of kicks have to go over.
Yeah.
It's tricky. It's a fascinating one.
That's why Harry Byrne, I think, gives you...
Well, he's the hybrid.
A mix of the both, but without maybe the flash and the excitement.
That 7 out of 10 of everything.
And maybe that's what Ireland need right now, but it's some turnaround for him.
No, it is. Rob Kearney was at the Virgin launch last week, and he thinks Byrne's going to get the nod. And
Rob Kearney would be well connected.
Well, I never want to say it to him, but I'm like, are you talking to Johnny Sexton? Do you like play paddle together? What's going on? I don't reveal. I'm like, you seem just so sure of that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know.
When ex-players, a bit like Luke Fitzgerald on the left wing, when they come out with stuff like that, you always have to take note of it, because the circles that they mix in.
I love a good Luke Fitzgerald. I was talking to someone I really respect. Oh, really? Okay, cool.
And then we were playing paddle.
Yeah. So I don't know. It is fascinating though. This Six Nations, I mean, this is it really in many respects. So then, to round this conversation off, by all rights, given what happened against South Africa in November, we should actually be starting this conversation with the scrum. I mean, that's not that it's in crisis, but you can bet that France have looked at that a lot, and they're going to target that significantly on Thursday. So there are injuries and there are question marks. What's the front row? The props in particular. Obviously, Hooker's fine with the two boys, but where are we on the props?
I think Jack Boyle is pretty nailed on. Obviously, Andrew Porter and Paddy McCarthy are ruled out through injury. Jack Boyle himself only came back from injury for Leinster against Bayonne last weekend, but he was excellent, really good. And I think he has a point to prove as well, Joe. He didn't play in November due to Paddy McCarthy's emergence, yet he was a real key figure in Ireland's Six Nations campaign. So I think he's coming in with a bit of a pep in his step, and it just shows how quickly the picture can change. Yeah. You don't get a single minute in November and all of a sudden you're being asked to hold up the scrum.
And who's behind him if he limps off after 10 minutes?
Well, that is a very interesting one because Jeremy Loughman has earned a recall from the cold. He won his last cap during the 24 Six Nations against Italy, which Ireland won. He's come in from the cold. Michael Milne, who made the move from Leinster to Munster, earned his first cap on the summer tour last year and was ahead of Jeremy Loughman. But Milne hasn't been able to get ahead of Jeremy Loughman as first choice for Munster. And Loughman was very good, like I mentioned earlier, against Toulon a couple of weeks ago. And I would imagine that pretty much secured his place in the squad. So it's whether Andy Farrell sticks to, no, we think Milne is one for the future, or they back Loughman, who has been delivering as first choice for Munster. But you really are going down deep into the depth chart there.
Okay. Let's be optimistic and presume Tadhg Furlong has 60, 70 minutes in him. And then he'll be ably supported by someone.
Clarkson, yeah. Clarkson has been, I think, excellent for Ireland and Leinster over the last kind of couple of years. And like I said, Ireland have named 4 tight heads. They could have Finlay Bealham in there, but he's rated as touch and go. And how many players do you really want to be playing against France with significantly less game time under their belt? And Tom O'Toole is there as well, Joe. And he's probably worth mentioning in that loose head conversation as well, because Ireland last year and the year before were keen to have a look at Tom O'Toole on the loose head side of the scrum, but Ulster haven't bought into that at all. They see him primarily as a tight head. So it'll be fascinating to see whether Ireland look to give Tom O'Toole some minutes. I don't know if France is the ideal place to do that, to be honest, but he is another potential option at loose head.
There's nothing ideal about France.
No. And not, you said not really in crisis, or I'm not sure your words. I think the Irish scrum is in crisis.
Do you?
Yeah.
It's more than just...
I think absolutely, yeah.
But beyond the South African situation?
Yeah, I think like the provinces in general have conceded plenty of penalties from the scrum as well.
Leinster scrum, admittedly club level, and it's borderline the Irish scrum. Leinster scrum is bossing plenty. I'm not seeing the Munster scrum being destroyed. Like in the November window, did New Zealand and Chicago do a massive number in the Irish scrum?
Not a massive number, but I think the manner in which South Africa took them apart has the potential to leave scars. And particularly when you don't have Andrew Porter, you don't have Paddy McCarthy, it's a deep-powered front row.
No, it's just I remember, like obviously even previewing the game, I don't even think I didn't hear anyone mention the Irish scrum all that much. You know, obviously, listen, it'll be big battle of scrum, South Africa, etc. But I don't remember a sense of trepidation before that game, because generally over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, the Irish scrum has done what we expect of an Irish scrum, which is they held their own.
Hold your own, yeah.
So that's why when I say I'm not sure if it's in crisis or not, I want a larger sample size. Now, if they go fine against France, then the South African day looks increasingly like a bad day at the office, and already you've circled the calendar for November this year for the rematch in Dublin. But obviously, if France target it and do a number on it, then that's what we're talking about.
And England as well. England will be licking their lips. They have a very good scrum.
So we'll find out.
Yeah, when we're talking here at the end of the break weekend, we'll know a lot more where Ireland stand, but also where the scrum stands, and they obviously go hand in hand.
Who, with that in mind, then obviously Joe McCarthy's back, and that's plenty of beef. Who are your likely locks and back row very quickly?
It all depends on where Tadhg Byrne plays, because he's obviously one of the first names in the team sheet. I think, interestingly, he has been playing at 6 for Munster in recent games. I'm not a big fan of the back row balance when Jack Conan and Caelan Doris are both, either one of them playing at 6. I think both of their best positions is number 8, and I would probably have Jack Conan to bring a bit of impact off the bench. I think it's a real shame. Obviously, Ryan Baird is another one who's ruled out through injury, but it's a big shame that Izuchuku is ruled out. I'd love to see him getting a crack in that number 6 jersey.
A long-term injury.
I'm not sure, Ulster haven't stated, but the fact he's not included in the squad obviously isn't a good sign. But I would love to see him, particularly with Baird, out of the equation. But as it is, I would imagine they will put Tadhg Byrne to 6 and have Joe McCarthy and James Ryan in the second row is what I'd imagine. I think it would be too early. I know it might be a bold call to say Edwin Adogbo possibly coming off the bench, but I can't see him starting that game of France. I think that would be too big of an ask.
No, he doesn't have the minutes. Even I thought full-time in cast. Now, there was a mix of steam coming off him, but I just thought he was blowing hard. Do you know what I mean? He was,
like I said, he missed back-to-back Achilles injuries. You do well to come back from one of them, Joe. Like, that is serious stuff. And when you're carrying all that weight down on it, so...
Okay. God, it's interesting. Let's go to France. Fabien Galthie picked his...
Finally.
Is there anything else from Ireland I should mention?
No, I think we've covered it off. I think, as I said, a lot of the players who fans will be, crying about her not there are most likely in that Ireland 15 squad. So
okay. So Fabien Galthie has picked his 7th Six Nations squad. There is some talk, looking at the French press, of back-to-back Six Nations Championships, which has not happened since 06-07. And they have the favourable year this time around in that they have Ireland at home and England on the final day of the championship at home. It's a 42-man squad to Ireland's 37-man squad. And I suppose Galthié has just kind of caused ructions, really, by leaving out their all-time top try scorer Damien Penaud, by leaving out Gaël Fickou, who is on 98 French caps and just on the cusp of becoming only the third. I mean, it's harder to do it in French rugby. Only the third centurion in French rugby, but he's out of the squad. And Gregory Aldrit out of the squad as well. So Fickou, Aldrit, Damien Penaud out of the squad. I think, you ask the average rugby fan, name 10 French players. I think these three are in everyone's 10. Big players. Like Fickou's been sensationally good at centre for a good few years now. Penaud's Penaud and Aldrit's Aldrit. So just reading the French press, Galthié, when he first took charge, you remember for however long, the French selection was all over the place. I mean, you'd have different teams week to week. There was no consistency. It was emotional. It was reactionary. It was crazy. And Galthié came in and said, let's settle all that right down. Went with the young players and stuck with them. He calls them premium players, is how Google Translate refers them to me. So about a year ago, Galthié very publicly in the French media said the era of the premium player being protected is over. And this very much bears that out. I can't get the info on Gaël Fickou. I don't know, is that form? I don't know what that is. Damien Penaud, obviously, last year, after a stunningly terrible performance against England, dropping balls, bad attitude. A lot of criticism of, even from the French coaches, the French staff have pointed out his lack of defensive work, and his attitude in defence is an issue for them. So he was left out of that match last year, that one match after the mixed performance in the defeat to England. But out of the squad is another thing, because anytime I've seen Bordeaux this year, he's ripping it up. What do you make of all this? Aside from the fact that it's great fun.
Yeah, great talking points. Yeah, I think it's worth going through them on a case by case, the three of them. So Penaud, yeah, you're right. I think himself and Galthié have a frosty enough relationship. I think that much is clear from the outside looking in. I think something that Yannick Brou, the Bordeaux head coach, said not that long ago is that now that Penaud has become the Champions Cup top try scorer, he wants to become the top assister. And that's why he's been throwing mad passes to set people up when he could have just scored the tries himself. And I wonder if that kind of attitude is something that Fabien Galthie is just like, I can't be dealing with this. You're an out-and-out try scorer. And I think he is. He's a bit of a throwback, I think, to French players from yesteryear. And there's something wonderful and magic about him. But if he's not a great trainer, and I think Galthié has liked the French winger Adesagbe, who I'd imagine is the one who's going to come in for Penaud. But the timing of this, Joe, is never a good time to drop your top scorer, who has been in brilliant form for Bordeaux. But it has ramifications for the out-half situation, because Romain Ntamack has been ruled out of the Ireland game due to injury. And there's a big push in France now at the moment for Mathieu Jalibert to finally get his chance in the Six Nations. He's obviously played before, but to be finally handed the keys to the kingdom as such. But he's another player who has a frosty relationship with Galthié. If you remember, he left camp, I think it was last year, and looked like he might not play for France again under Galthié. Now, Galthié could do a very French thing by playing Thomas Ramos, who is a fullback. He could put him at 10. The issue with Jalibert is that he's very much the alpha, and obviously he's playing alongside one of rugby's biggest alphas in terms of Antoine Dupont, who, by the way, it's going to be his first game back, and I would say Andrew Porter's not going to be playing, but I'd say the French crowd are going to give Tadhg Beirne a bit of a hostile reception, I'd imagine, for the incident that was no fault of their own, the injury that Dupont got last year. But if you're going to pick Jalibert at 10, surely it makes sense to have your two Bordeaux wingers in Louis Biébaray on the wing and Damien Penaud on the other wing. So it's very hard to make sense of that unless Galthié is going to put Thomas Ramos at 10, in which case he's not really worried about that Bordeaux connection.
Talk about, whatever, leaving Zach Ward out, talk about creating a rod for your own back here. Yeah. Like I said, I was just reading in Le Monde that the fleet-footed wing from Bordeaux suffers from a lack of defensive involvement already pointed out by the French staff. So there is that aspect to it as well. I can't say I notice Damien Penaud's defensive work, good or otherwise, but I do notice his 40 tries for France, and I'm glad he's not playing. That's fine by me. They want to do that.
Yeah. Even though Adesagbe is a serious player, I think
I haven't seen much of him.
He's very good. I think he's 21 or 22.
Let me guess. He's fast.
He's fast. Yeah, exactly. I think Ficou has been France's defensive linchpin.
Unbelievable.
Sean Edwards' go-to man.
Yeah.
They have some word in French. I can't think of it off the top of my head. He's basically their defensive leader.
He's the daddy of that group.
Yeah.
He's been sensationally good.
Yeah, so there's going to be changes in the midfield. I would imagine it's going to be Yoram Moefana, who also plays for Bordeaux. Again, that Bordeaux connection. And Deporter, a young French centre who's coming through, who's been sensational. Or they could play a Toulouse. I think he's 20, Kevin Gourget, I think is how you pronounce it. He is serious business.
The French press talking about insane competition centre, but they are young players on a big night. I suspect Ireland will have some plays to try and expose any lack of experience there, because Ficou's just reading things.
Yeah, and he's part. You asked about his form. I saw he was playing on the wing lately, and he's part of a Racing team that are really struggling at the moment. So could be down to form as well. And like Gregor Aldridge, obviously, Penaud is the more kind of glitzy glamour name, but he's been France's starting number 8 for the last number of years. Now, I know he started on the bench for La Rochelle this weekend. They've had an up and down season, but Gregor Aldridge is one of the heartbeats of this French team, and I'm not even sure, it's not obvious who's going to play number 8. I think there's going to be an element of square pegs and round holes, because I don't think they have, unless I'm mistaken, another out and out natural number 8 in their squad.
That's bizarre.
They have in November last year against South Africa, they played Michael Guillard, who is normally a lock/back row for Lyon, another young guy, but they played him number 8. It didn't go that well, so unless they're looking to play him number 8, but again, Aldridge, like a captain for club, he captained France while Dupont was out injured. Very hard to get your head around how he's not in the squad.
It's mad stuff. Yeah.
So do you think, let me throw a question to you then, do you think, with all that in mind and the madness of the French, that playing them first up might be the best time to play them?
Yeah, well, we briefly touched on that before coming on air. Because of the continuity, one of the advantages we have, obviously, where the bulk of the players are playing together at Leinster, albeit not playing sensationally well. Ireland often start very well in the Championship, and the French often grow into the Championship. So, you would take France in round 1 traditionally over round 4.
Marseille 2 years ago when they delivered an unbelievable performance.
But it's just, we must get a French guest on to read the tea leaves and what's going on. This just reads as bizarre.
Yeah, and Galthie wouldn't be the most popular figure in French rugby either. I know obviously they won the Six Nations last year, but you hit the nail on the head with making a rod for his own back.
Yeah.
If this doesn't go well, there will be absolute outcry in France.
It's such a gear shift from protecting his premium players, understanding that form can come and go. Ficou is a perfect example of whatever's going on at Racing 92, and the club's not been going well for several years now, and he's on the wing, and he's here, and he's there, and he's everywhere. With 98 caps against Ireland on opening night, do I think Ficou in the centre would put in a really polished, professional, good performance? Absolutely.
But even they've named a 42-man squad, even having him in the squad, just so the younger players can learn off him, because clearly his best years are behind him. It doesn't make much sense. So while we're kind of, going through the Ireland squad and finding kind of some things to talk about, it's nothing like the bomb that Galthie has just dropped. No,
look, we'll talk to someone over in France. Maybe Ficou's pace has gone off a cliff. Maybe something's gone awry. Although if his pace had gone, you wouldn't say go out in the wing and do a job for him.
No.
So I don't know. It's really interesting. So that's France. Ange Capuozzo unfortunately left out of the Italy squad name today. He's fractured his finger, so that is a real pity. He's missing for them, as is Tommaso Allen. What do you think, without knowing the teams, without knowing anything, Paris opening night?
Kind of buying into my own theory that it is the best time to play France, and I think back to Marseille 2 years ago. I think the madness that's going on in their camp at the moment. Now, that said, you look at the trend of both teams, but France didn't have a great November either. They had a terrible second half against South Africa when they lost as well. It was not quite as bad as Ireland's, but it was certainly certainly up there. So while they won the Six Nations, they didn't send their first choice players to New Zealand at all in the summer. So yeah, like I mean, let's wait and see how it plays out over the next couple of weeks in terms of, is Hugo Keenan going to be able to start at fullback? But cautiously think it's the best time to play them, but also equally knowing that that could spectacularly backfire. France opening night of Six Nations, a Thursday night as well, Joe. I know it's so far from ideal for Irish supporters, but for any French supporters who aren't from Paris, a Thursday night isn't ideal either. So maybe you could capitalise on that sense of it as well. But that's definitely the glass half full approach. I think Ireland's body of work over the course of last year was trending downwards, I think you would have to say, rather than upwards, and that makes me very nervous as well.
I'm in the nervous camp. I'm braced.
Okay, ready.
Yeah.
Ready to be hurt.
Yeah. Okay, just before we wrap up, I guess a couple of things going on, maybe just to mention any other business section. You were at the Dexcom in Galway yesterday, the new stand. Clan stand?
The Clan stand, that's
what am I missing? CLAN. What is
family? It's the Clan Terrace that they had. It's
kind of two ends in Clan?
You have to ask the Galway Gael Gores, but
right.
Clan Terrace is where the diehard Connacht supporters are. So they've made it into the Clan stand. It's very impressive, I have to say. From what Connacht had to what it is now, it's very, very impressive. The new stadium is going to hold 12,500 when all is said and done. Obviously, they're playing Leinster on Saturday. It's the grand opening. There is a proper buzz around the place. So just to give a flavour, I suppose, of what the stand is like, Connacht previously weren't able to do much corporate stuff, which is obviously where a lot of money is generated. So they've got a massive suite on the third floor that holds 860 people that they'll be able to have in.
The Atlantic Premium
level, yeah. And the view from up there is spectacular in terms of seeing, I think it's called Loch Atala. It's spectacular and a great view, obviously, of the match. The dog track remains, and across the way you still have the big glass stand, and nothing has changed from behind the goals, but there is a designated family room, which was a big thing that the province wanted to push for, so the wives, partners and children can go in there before the games. That
is such a great touch for the players.
Yeah, and it's something that we could just gloss over, but imagine it's a really nice space. There's a sensory room called the Corges Suite, which again is such a fantastic idea. I know more of the bigger stadiums, the Aviva, are catering from that as well, but that's brilliant because it means that everyone has the opportunity to come, and that's going to be kitted out. So that's brilliant as well. They have a thing called the Tunnel Club, which you've probably seen Man City have it, Spurs have it, and Saracens have it, which is basically now, I'm well aware that not all these private premium suites are going to, be used by your average punter, but they're going to be well looked after as well in terms of the stand. But the Tunnel Club is basically like a glass private suite in the tunnel where you'll be able to see the players coming in and out, and you'll have your own special seats. Again, that is a great way for Connacht to make money. And this is what you're talking about, is in terms of trying to make better signings. I think it's one of the reasons why Stuart Lancaster was attracted to the place. I think it will help attract new players, because remember a few years ago after Bundyaki came back from the World Cup, he had a real go at the state of the facilities in Connacht, and they have a new training centre as well. It's not just a new stand, so it's 40 million worth of works that they've put in, and it had been a while since I had been in Connacht, and honestly, having been there yesterday, I was blown away by how different it looks.
Okay.
It's really, really cool.
As I understand it, the High Performance Centre is behind the stand.
Right behind the stand, yeah. So they walk from one to the other. And again, we were talking to, Dennis Buckley, who's been there since under 14. He's 35 now. He was talking about the days they used to train in porta cabins. It's a bit like, the Leinster stories when Cheika came in, kind of from rags to riches. And it's very exciting because there's nothing like it in the sort of the west of Ireland. So Connacht are hoping to tap into that. And yeah, it looks fantastic. And I suppose for the game itself, it's kind of now, there's so much focus and attention. This game has been circled in the calendar, for a long time. I think you're kind of hoping that the players can sort of embrace the occasion rather than let it on top of them, because the game itself is massively important at the weekend, because they've obviously had a stuttering start under Lancaster.
Because I was reading previously, Connacht's hospitality offering was that you'd go to a hotel near the stadium, and then be bussed over, which is just not the vibe that you want.
But when you're bussed over, they couldn't get spaces. That
All
was
right.
that was the issue, because all the proper diehard fans had been in and taken over the good spots. So their corporate offering was very minimal. And again, I know I'm kind of reluctant to focus on the corporate element, because we do spend so much time with the atmosphere, the Aviva and all things like that. But this is a very important way for Connacht to generate money. And like I said, that could go into enhancing their squad and coaches over the next
Yeah,
couple
yeah.
of
No,
years.
look, people get that. Look, if someone is silly enough to pay silly money to sit in a glass box near the tunnel, good for them.
Each their own, yeah.
Yeah, you do that, and Connacht will take your money. I saw as well, obviously, they're trying to really tap into corporate world during the week, and this can bring in commercial revenue. Like, I maybe I'm reading this wrong. I saw like on that premium suite, which is a capacity for 800 people.
860, I think, yeah.
But like the tables were done, it looked remarkably like how a wedding table would be. Can you get married there?
So there was a function on.
A wedding?
No, they had a function between all their clubs, and we actually met a couple of them who were coming in for a big meeting, and they were being shown around. But yeah, you can do anything. They're going to have their Player of the Season awards in there. I don't think what we were told yesterday was there aren't many spaces as big as that in the west of Ireland. So again, they're going to tap into places that they could never do before. It's a massive win-win, and there's really exciting things happening in Connacht at the moment. I know this season, I think it will take a little bit of time for the Stuart Lancaster effect to properly kick in. But you look at the new training facilities, you look at the new stand, you look at getting a big name. They're starting to produce more and more young players. Like, it's really exciting, and I think it's about now building on that.
Yeah. Swooping for Kieran Frawley, all these things are good. To sound like a complete ingrate here, I did look at it, and there's huge excitement about it, and I understand that. And it's a 6,500 stand. It brings the capacity to 12,500, like you said. When you do still look at the aerial shot, for all the talk, it's so amazing and everything. It's more of a wider point about Irish stadiums generally.
Yeah.
Because even Rudd on Monday made the point about Bayonne Stadium.
I was talking to him before I came in as well, and he made the point, yeah.
Just like
We're good at building stands.
two stands,
Yeah.
4 sides around, tight to the pitch, atmosphere. And Rudd was rightly saying Ireland needs about 15 of these around the country. And there is that thing when you look at the aerial shot of the Dexcom now. And again, I applaud them. What Connacht are doing, Lancaster was making the point, like, there are Premiership clubs folding during COVID. Connacht has thrived off the pitch, and you have to be fair to them and look at where they've come from.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were just like looking at it fresh-eyed and not knowing the history of the last 10 years, you would say, well, there's still a dog track around it, and there's still very little behind either goal. It's not, like, can we, for such a wealthy country, and in some ways it shows how lacking funding for sport in the country is.
Yeah.
That, like, we're so buzzed into this.
Mm.
And you look at what Bayonne have.
Yeah.
And France are one of the great exemplars. Like, I mean, amazing. And municipal sports centres for the whole community, different sports. Like, they just have it right, and we just have it arseways. And so you have Connacht fighting against the tide a little bit. So it's brilliant. But I did just look at it and think, God, there still is a greyhound track, and there still is nothing behind the goals.
It's a fair point, but from what it was,
I accept that.
And it was the one point as well worth mentioning is it was raining when I was there yesterday, and I was down in the Clan Terrace where the diehard Connacht supporters are going to be standing, and unfortunately, with the way the wind blows, you're still going to get wet, because even though the roof goes over you, the wind just blows in. They couldn't just build a glass box around it for everyone to keep them protected, but that is something that maybe some people will be perhaps surprised with when they're there, because it was quite windy and rainy, as it is now today as well. Yesterday, I was kind of thinking, they can't really control the weather though as well.
Well, there are prevailing winds. Okay.
But the winds in Connacht are positive, Joe.
No, they are. Well, sorry, and one last point on all of this. It's been a bad month for them.
Mm.
This season, and maybe, and I spoke to Stuart Lancaster maybe a month ago now, and even then we touched on this weekend, Leinster, the new stand. He was talking about like a real sense of they're really itching for this to happen. They feel this is going to ignite something maybe. Their season's at a really interesting crossroads here. It's been very iffy. If it continues in this vein, then I think Connacht fans will be disappointed the way the Lancaster first season has gone. They need some kind of lift off. Defense is still a big issue. Consistency still an issue. Giving up big leads is an issue. Their performance against Leinster a couple of weeks ago, what was it, 50 points conceded. It feels like there's a lot riding this weekend on let's get some momentum into this thing.
It's a good start. Yeah, it's a good chance, to kick start everything, and it could go one or two ways. And my perception of the outside looking in is that I wonder if Lancaster is trying to do too much too soon. We know that he's one of these rare coaches who coaches both sides of the ball in terms of attack and defence. But Connacht's brought over Rod Sieb from Australia as attack coach initially, but we know that Lancaster is a de facto attack coach as well, so I'm not sure what the balance there is. But I think it will. I think it will come right. They've just announced the signing today as well, Joe, of experienced South African prop from Bath, Francois Van Veck, who I think will be a big help to their scrum next season. So if they were to lose this weekend, I think it's worth mentioning that it's unlikely that Leinster are going to be fully locked and loaded, because I think a lot of their Ireland players have probably maxed out their games now, and they're going to be wrapped in cotton wool before that France game. Whereas I would imagine the likes of Cian Prendergast, Bundy Aki, Finlay Beelam's injured, Matt Hansen injured, but I'd imagine they're going to be playing this weekend. And they've put so much stock in it that if it was to fall flat and they were to have another heavy defeat, I think they're looking at a long end of the season. But look, they're coming in at the back of a huge win for how much stock you want to put at that against Montauban in the Challenge Cup.
I put no stock in that.
But at least I would imagine it would help with the vibes anyway, at least, because they need something to happen this weekend. And I'm going down to it on Saturday. Really looking forward to it. It's the hottest ticket in town. All tickets have long been sold out, and hopefully they get the win, just for Connacht's sake, to match the occasion.
Yeah, big time. Do you want to give us a final word then on Munster fallout?
A final word on the disastrous Munster fallout. Yeah, where to start? I've been on the road with them the last 2 weeks. I was over in Toulon and they were very unlucky. I mean, that decision at the end, I don't want to go over old ground, but that decision at the end from Carl Dixon was outrageous, in my opinion. Now,
do we know who the offender was yet?
Well, I asked Dennis Leamy on the following Tuesday, and Munster still hadn't found out. I assume they did now. I think it was probably Tom Farrell. But the fact that the players didn't know, the coaches didn't know, we didn't know, just shows how much of a bizarre decision it was. Now, look, Munster, they still conceded a hatful of points. Their discipline was shocking. I was having a look back over it, Joe. The 4 yellow cards that they've had in their 3 Champions Cup pool defeats cost them 52 points while they were down to 14 men. That's staggering, really, when you think about it. That's back to Tyg Burns' yellow card against Bath. They scored 21 unanswered points. When Tyg Byrne was in the bin in Toulon, they cost him 14 points. And then Alex Nankiville was in the bin, cost another 3, 17. And then last week, Tom Farrell's crazy yellow card cost him 14 and cost him the game. So they need to iron out those sort of fixables, I suppose. I think a bit like the Stuart Lancaster era Connacht, I think it's going to take, unfortunately, a bit of time for Clayton Macmillan's imprint to happen, but I do think it will happen. I don't think it's all doom and gloom. I think, unfortunately, where Munster are at right now, the Challenge Cup is probably, their par. I think it's been so disappointing that the Leinster performance at Croke Park was, what we can say now, is probably like a flash in the pan. And like Macmillan spoke of that being their line in the sand moment, and they played so good that day. Their game plan was on point. You look at Jack Crowley, the confidence he was playing with. And I put it to him, Macmillan, after the game at the weekend, that they've gone backwards since then, and he argued that other teams have just gotten better, but I think Munster have gone backwards since that game in Croke Park. So they have to stop the rot on Friday night, Joe. They are playing down in Cork against the Dragons, because they've lost the last 4 games in a row. But I don't think the Challenge Cup, like I touched on there, is anything that they should be sniffing at. I think they should be going all out to potentially win the Challenge Cup, because they're 6th in the URC table as well. I mean, if they don't finish in the top 8, which they should, there's still a long way to go. But if they weren't to finish in the top 8, the Challenge Cup will be their only route back to the Champions Cup next season. So there's a lot going on there.
And given potentially like an Ulster or La Rochelle in the semi-final stages, it'd be kind of a exciting Champions Cup or Challenge Cup rather to win, Challenge Cup journey to win.
But they have a very, very tough task away to Exeter in the
Yes.
round of 16 there. Like, that's one of the hardest draws they could have got. Exeter have really found their form again.
Like it's weird, Munster. I think you have to be very honest about the talent pool available to Macmillan, and you would have to look at that team and say they're a last 16 quarter-final Champions Cup team squad, strength-wise, and they have it in their locker because there is still something special about Munster to go to La Rochelle and win.
Yeah.
So that's all there. They're not one of the 8 worst teams in the competition who didn't make it through the pool stages. So it's a disastrous effort, and yet you'd say incredibly unlucky against Toulon, and a brilliant performance versus what we saw against Cast. And Alan Quinlan, I thought, summed it up very well. I was listening to him with Fiona Hayes talking during the week, and he said something I thought, God, that rings so true. He said, with Munster, there's no like guaranteed area of dominance or strength that you can go into a game and feel, well, that's their route. And like, so by that he meant, it's not like the attack is always good, but it does blow very hot. I mean, we saw
It's good.
5 tries at home to Cast.
Yeah.
I mean, the attack, when at its best, the highlights reel of Munster this season, their attack looks as good as it's ever looked in a very long time. But so the attack blows hot and cold. Defence blows hot and cold. The defence you saw in Toulon versus what we saw on Saturday, and that one's a killer. That is on the players. That's an attitude thing. You know what I mean? That's actually shocking.
The one-on-one missed tackles that they had were just
Yeah.
crazy. They're coach killers. You can put whatever plan you want in place in the week, but missing one-on-one tackles like they did, like they made Cass look like prime All Blacks. They were very good now, but made them look far better than what they were.
It speaks of we were fearful and respectful of Toulon, and we didn't really afford Cass the same respect. That's indefensible, no pun intended. That's indefensible as a professional rugby team, and like the Munster teams of ore would never have done that of yore. Scrum, very hit and miss. Line out, very hit and miss.
The line out is still a shambles.
Shambles.
Just to pick up that, it's really poor.
What are they, 67 and 76?
76, yeah. And like you go back to last season in the Champions Cup quarter final in Bordeaux when they didn't have Alex Codling, and Alex Codling has come in now, but not enough improvements have been made in that area at all. Like I think it's been a disaster.
Kicking game has been a shambles.
Yeah.
I mean, the kicking display in Belfast was some of the worst kicking display I've seen from a professional team in a long time, and that's continued right the way through. Game management, very poor, like in different ways, you know what I mean? They're not giving their forwards a rest. Tyke Byrne was asked, like, you were 10 points up going into the last quarter against Cast. Did you manage the game? I don't know if you kept running from deep. You kept the game loose. Cast probably had better weapons than you. And he's like, yeah, maybe, but we were having some joy with it. It's hard. And then things like, even just competition now. Like, could they have got a losing bonus point in Bath when Bath had kind of tapered off? Did Munster get together and think there's still a point in this for us?
Which they did in Toulon. I mean, the way
fair,
they
they did.
rescued the bonus point with Jack
Last
Crowley
stand,
and Ruan
yeah.
Quinn. The goal kicking, I presume you're going to miss, Joe, because ultimately if Jack Crowley had kicked his goals last weekend, Munster wouldn't be in the position that they are. And as harsh as that sounds, and I don't, like I said at the start when we were talking about the Ireland out half situation, I just don't. He's lacking confidence, I think, at the moment, and I think you're seeing that borne out in several different aspects of his game. He's trying to do too much.
I think worryingly, I think the kicking is actually more than just he's having a spell of not being confident. I'm not sure Crowley over a sustained period has ever really convinced kicking off the tee.
Yeah, Mads has been very good in this podcast about that. He's talked about his maybe using a different tee and things like that. Like the errors were the missed kicks were compounded when you see Cass replacement kicker coming on and kicking two from either touchline. He left the shot clock timeout on one of the kicks, and one of the kicks that he made, he just made the kick. Now, kickers obviously have their routine, and sometimes they're actually not helped anymore by when players like Craig Casey celebrating the try and slamming the ball down and it goes away. Players need to start realising that when they score tries, they have to get the ball back to the kicker, because kickers have such, like, almost to the second that their routine, and the way he kind of brush one wide, he's just not striking the ball well. Like I said, Joe, I've been covering Jack Crowley since his underage days, and like, he seems like the weight of the world is on his shoulders at times. And I think that's down to the responsibility that he takes for this is his Munster team. And that's all well and good, but it's being borne out in frustration. Like, I never remember Jack Crowley being as cranky with the referees as he is now. And I'm wondering, like, is he trying to be someone he's not? Is he trying to be, this big kind of alpha, which I think he is anyway. I don't think he needs to try and do that. But I think he's getting in his own head, and there's times where you'd love if he just kind of relaxed and did what he does best, because he was trying, particularly when he was moved from 10 last weekend, he was trying to do too much, and he was forgetting about his primary role in terms of facilitating those around him, and the shape of Munster's attack just fell to pieces. But to just go back to the kicking, you have to nail the basics as a 10. And we talked about France. If you had a kick to win the game in Paris at the moment, would Andy Farrell be trusting Jack Crowley to nail it? I'm not sure he would.
Yeah. I guess the optimistic slant on Crowley is he does seem very genuinely mentally strong. The way he came back from the summer was super impressive. That's not a million years ago. So maybe he can kind of extricate himself from Munster's woes. The other two I jotted down, power, like they're underpowered. They've been underpowered for a long time. And then the discipline you've mentioned. So you add all that up.
It's a lot.
It's a huge amount. And yet you would still say they should have actually made the knockout stages. Like Toulon, very unlucky. They should really, they could play that. I think they play that Cast game 10 times. And if their head is right, they probably win it. So it's like both it's where they are, but also they're not this bad, and that makes it doubly frustrating. So it's just...
Yeah, they played. That was the 20th time they'd played Cast, and I've covered a lot of those games which have been over there. That was not the Cast team of old, and I wonder, did that play into the mindset of the players that, look, they're going to be really forward orientated. Let's play a fast, like, get the ball to the width, which they were trying to do, but they didn't realise. Or sorry, they must have realised, because they would have done their pre-game analysis. They had serious athletes in the backline. The Fijian who was playing 13, Amidang on the wing, they were unbelievable athletes.
Yeah, so I don't give like I'm allowed to sit down and say it's Cast. I know what to expect. Yeah, they would have done. Of
course, yeah, which makes it worse. Makes it worse.
Well, it does beg the question: why did you play that way?
Yeah.
So I don't know. So I guess for Connacht and Munster, interesting final third of the season to go.
Yeah.
Okay, we are out of time. Cian Tracey, you're over in Portugal next week, I think.
Yep.
Someone's got to do it.
Someone has to do it. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Cheers, Joe.
Our rugby coverage, as ever, with thanks to Energia. Thanks, folks.